In a world where crushing debt keeps you trapped, where living paycheck to paycheck has become your new normal, and where the dream of retirement seems impossibly out of reach, there's hope. Join financial evangelist Ralph E. Stepp Jr., a man who's walked through the fire of financial failure and emerged stronger on the other side. Welcome to Ask Ralph, the show where real-world experience meets biblical truth to break the bondage of financial despair. Get ready to take control of your money, break free from the financial stress, and align your resources with God's purpose for your life. This is Ask Ralph with Ralph E. Stepp Jr.
Well, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm so glad you chose to join us as we continue our journey in helping you master your finances from a Christian perspective. Now, let me go ahead and bring Craig in. There we go. Craig, hey, welcome to the show. Craig, how are you today?
Good. How's it going?
Everything is great. We got a lot of good questions to cover today. We're going to talk about home equity interest. We're going to talk about how to save money at the grocery store. And we're also going to talk about some everyday expenses. So everybody buckle in, settle in, get ready for some great information. And as we go through this, feel free to share your questions right in the comments. You can ask questions, you can comment about what we're talking about. But I'm really going to start with this. And a lot of people can empathize with what I'm saying. Are you feeling tired? Feel like your money's slipping right through your fingers? Do you ever wonder where it all goes at the end of the month? Well, today we're going to cover home equity interest. We're going to cover grocery savings. We're talking about everyday expenses. So let's get to our first question. Let me make sure. Now, last week, Craig, when I was doing this, it's first time I've had a guest on the show. I wasn't flipping the slides as quickly as I needed to. So we're going to try to do this right this time. But let's jump right into our first question. And this one comes from John, and it says this. It says, "Hi, Ralph. I've been wondering about the secret to deducting home equity loan interest. I've heard conflicting information, and I'm not sure what to believe. Can you help?" Well, Craig, I don't know if you're fairly familiar with this one, but a few years ago, what they did was they put a cap on the amount of equity or the amount of interest that you can deduct. And they basically said that if you got a home equity loan that wasn't for improvements to your home or something like that, you couldn't deduct it. So this has caused a lot of people to not understand this. So the key to this is if you are going to deduct home equity loan interest, it has to be for these categories. It's got to be used for a loan to buy the property, to build the property, or to substantially improve the home. Now, a lot of people will wonder, okay, Ralph, what does substantial improvements mean? Well, let me break it down for you. In my personal view, and I've looked at some IRS code, I've looked at some other authorities on this, and they said if it adds value, if it prolongs a life or adapts to new uses. So the IRS would really define these things as those things that enhance your home's value. Not things like a vacation, not things like buying a new car or paying debt. So the interest is not deductible if you're not using it for those things. Now, the thing you need to understand is all of this is predicated on your ability to do this on as an itemized deduction. And, we talked about this a little bit on the show last week. We've gotten to a point now where if you're a married filing joint couple, your standard deduction may be close to $30,000. So you have to have a pretty sizable first mortgage, second mortgage, or home equity loan, and even to get to that. But the big picture is if you're going to deduct this, it has to be secured by your main home. It could also be a vacation home or a second home. Now, here's where it gets more complicated than ever before. And this is what trips up a lot of people. When they change the tax law, they also put in this arbitrary number that the debt couldn't be more than $750,000. Now, this doesn't affect everybody. But if you've got mortgage A, and let's say you've got a vacation home or a beach home or some kind of, mountain home or something like that, you could easily, when you combine these properties, get over that 750. So that really is the whole point here. So again, though, you got to decide if you have enough to itemize. That's the first hurdle. Second hurdle, were these things used to improve your home, to make substantial improvements? I'll talk about that in a minute, like what that looks like. But you got to really understand that before you jump into this. What do you think, Craig?
Well, I always wonder about these sorts of things is how you really figure out if it's the right thing to do. Because sure, I may be able to deduct the interest, but I'm still having to pay back that loan. I'm still having to shell out that money, whenever that loan comes due. So I get some tax benefit, which helps reduce the sting, but there's still a pretty big financial sting there, isn't there?
Oh yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't realize, Craig. They come in to see me and they'll make a statement. I heard a train go by. We mentioned that we might hear the train there.
Yeah, sorry about
Where
that.
Craig has it. No, it's no big deal. Where Craig is on campus, we know it's going to be the 110 train, maybe, right? Is that the time it's going to come through? But anyway, you make a very valid point because I have a lot of people that come in, Craig, and they say to me, Ralph, look, should I pay off my home or am I going to lose an interest deduction? And I said, well, here's the thing you need to consider. And this is exactly what you were talking about, Craig. You're paying 100% of that interest dollar. Yes, you may be getting a tax benefit. Let's just use a simple example. Let's say you're in a 24% tax bracket. And let's say you have a state income tax. Like in Delaware, you're roughly looking at 8%. So even if we add 24 and 8, I can do math quick because I got enough fingers and toes. That takes me to 32. Well, even at 32%, that means you're still paying 68% of that interest. So it makes zero financial sense to pay that interest just for the sake of paying interest. Now, that said, one of the things I mention to my clients all the time is you also have to look at the opportunity cost. So if you're faced with this decision of do I take out a home equity loan or do I use my own money, you've got to really look at what you're making on that money. If you've got that money sitting or parked in a money market account and it's earning you 3%, and let's say the home equity loan is 8%, it's not really 8% with the tax deduction, but take 30% of that 8%. So it's like 6.5, something 6.6 if I'm doing my math right. It's still more than what you're paying or what you're losing in that investment. So that's really what the key is, Craig. But a lot of people don't understand that. They think, well, I've got to have this tax deduction because if I don't have this tax deduction, when I go to see Ralph to get my taxes done or when I do my taxes, I'm going to have a problem. But that is a very astute point, Craig.
Well, and that makes me think about something that's kind of a tangent here, but there's a home equity loan and then there's a home equity line of credit. So let's say I'm worried about spending that money I've got in my savings account, but it makes financial sense to, not get the 3% and not have to pay the 8%, that spread. But then what happens if there's an emergency? Well, it seems like one strategy might be to go down and get a home equity line of credit that you don't start paying interest on until you actually tap that line of credit. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a show about that a couple months ago. The difference between a home equity line, or excuse me, a home equity loan and a home equity line of credit. I'm a huge fan of home equity line of credits because it's kind of like that emergency fund that's sitting on the sidelines. And if you need to use it, use it. You don't have to take a draw from it. Now, you need to understand the nuances of the particular one you have. A lot of banks will take away that line if you don't use it in 24 months or 12 months or something like that. But Craig, no, that's a very, very good point because a lot of people don't realize that can be that secondary backup. You may have your 3 to 6 months of savings in your emergency fund, but something could happen. You could have a devastation come through and insurance doesn't cover it for some reason, or maybe you've got a bridge till you get, like a lot of people were affected by the floods, people were affected by tornadoes. Well, it's great that the insurance company is going to come through and pay, but you might be looking up at the ceiling and you've got no roof. Well, you've got to do something right away. So that's where you can go and, tap that line of credit, get that repair started, get that repair done. And then when you get those insurance proceeds, go ahead and pay that off. But that is a very good point.
Well, thanks. Thanks for clearing that up. And I have one more question that may sound a little bit odd, but
Sure.
you were talking about making improvements that add value to the
Right.
home. So are those fixed improvements? Like let's say that my wife wants new drapes.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're going to cost me a bunch of money because that kind of thing is expensive now. I mean, that might increase the value of the home, but that's not really an improvement, is it?
Now that what they really talk about is something that prolongs the life of the home.
Okay.
This would be something like you're going to put an expansion on. Let's say you've got an area in your house, like people who put an expansion on their kitchen, maybe they want to put like a sunroom up or something like that. But it can also cover like things like you're replacing your HVAC system because that can cost like the prices I'm seeing on
Yeah,
those
tell me
is
about it. Yeah,
outrageous, right?
yeah.
Let's say you got to put a new roof on. All the things that are fixed here. I think it would be a stretch to do curtains. It reminds me of the old "it's curtains for you." I don't remember where that comes from,
Yeah.
but it kind of as soon as you started saying, I kind of remembered. I was like, I think that's a cartoon I had listened to when I was a kid. But no, I think Craig, the main point is it has to be something that's going to prolong the life of the home and also add value to it. The big takeaway, what they're trying to get away from, is people who are using the money for paying off other debts. Or because I used to have a lot of clients that would do that. They'd go buy a car, and rather than getting a car loan, they'd go get a home equity line of credit because they could pay it over a longer period of time. And at the same time, they might be able to deduct the interest as compared
Right.
to this. So that's really the big takeaway from that.
So like just to make sure I'm clear, so drapes would probably be out, but if I replaced my windows,
Yes, absolutely. Windows
that
would
would
be a
be in.
definite.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And while we're
Okay.
talking about, remember last week we talked about energy credits. So don't
Right.
forget about that during that same process. Now, which leads me to sort of the follow up to this. So make sure whatever you're doing, understand those rules, keep accurate records of the loan proceeds so that if you ever do get audited, because it's really a system where it's the honor system from the IRS. In other words, and this is one of the things when I remember when this first came out, I said, this is going to be a nightmare for the IRS to try to manage because the lender's not going to say, oh, okay, Craig bought drapes, but Ralph renovated his kitchen. They're not going to know that. So if you're the unlucky winner of the audit lottery, then you better have records that say, okay, here's what I spent the money on. Here's what I did. And the interesting thing is money is fungible. So you could use it for this, but then, anyway, you what the money is. But this is something you want to reach out to a professional tax advisor and make sure you understand before you take that line of credit, because that could be very important. I just want to remind everybody while we're here, I'm just going to pop this up on the screen. I do write a blog post every day. There'll be a blog post for today's episode. And you can get to that by going to askralphpodcast.com/blog. It's where I go a little more in depth and I give you some resources to talk about. Well, Craig, let's move on to our second question. How's that sound?
Sure.
So the second question comes to us from Sarah. And Sarah writes this. She said, "Hi, Ralph. I'm struggling to save money on groceries without sacrificing nutrition or taste." Well, I'll tell you what, that's a good thing to do. You don't want to buy eggs right now. Can you share some practical and easy ways to cut costs without compromising on quality? Well, you know what? I think that's about the $1 million question, isn't it, Craig?
It is. It is, especially over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we've seen such inflation at the grocery store, and it's a challenge. My wife kind of handles that in our family, and it's kind of funny because every once in a while she'll drag me to the grocery store, and I'll walk down the aisles and I'll start making comments. She's like, "Are you? When's the last time you were at the grocery store?" I remember the last time we were there. I was looking at something. I think it was a sleeve of Coca-Cola. One of those. I think it's like a 12-pack of Coca-Cola, and I remember. I feel like they were $3 before. And now they're like $10. And she's like, "Have you been living under a rock?" I said, "I guess, I'm not used to doing that." And now, and we've even gotten, sort of lazy in that regard. We do the thing where you go to, I think we do Walmart right now, where you go and they pick your groceries for you. You just pull up and they drop them in, which is great.
It
But I think
is.
that kind of desensitizes you to the costs.
Well,
So
it is shocking. If you only go to the grocery store once every couple of months, it's just insane.
yeah, and it's funny though, because I hear people right now talking about, well, I guess my family's not going to eat eggs for a while. And I get it. As like, there is such, and this comes down to a discussion about, in fact, I recorded a show today that'll play next week about this whole idea of needs and wants. This really comes down to needs and wants. Now you've got to make difficult decisions, which I'm going to talk about here, some things that you can do, but you've got to make difficult decisions about those needs and wants. When you go to the grocery store now, it's okay. Well, we need to have, I'll use a silly example, like up in here in Delaware, when we're going to have a snowstorm, everybody goes and buys milk and bread. And so the laugh is once the snowstorm's over, everybody's making French toast because they bought milk. So I forgot the eggs too, milk, bread, and eggs. I'm like, well, do not people not, because it's kind of funny, but people jump to that. But you got to really start looking at what are your needs versus your wants. So one of the big things that I've worked with, and my wife tells me she does this, and I think it's a great idea for the people who are tuned in today, is plan your meals ahead of time. Really sit down. My wife and I sort of do this on Mondays when she's planning the grocery for the next weekend. And we kind of plan out, okay, what are we going to do this day? What are we going to do this day? And then kind of create a detailed grocery list based on your needs. Because If you just put it off and you say, well, I'm just going to show up at this store, I guarantee, and stores love this. You're going down the aisles with that cart and you are just grabbing stuff. Like, I remember when I was a little kid, my mom would take my sister and I to the grocery store. And we were like, this is game on time, right? Because we're trying to grab as much stuff as we're going to the aisles. My poor mom, single mom, trying to raise two kids. And listen, I'm a big kid, so I ate a lot, right? So here my mom, so what eventually my mom started saying, look, I'm not taking you kids to the grocery store anymore.
Huh.
You give me a list of what you want. You want some wants, put them on the list. And of course, I'd make my list. Well, I need 2 bottles of Pepsi, some honey buns, I mean, stuff that wasn't healthy for me. Now I'm kind of paying the price for that. But I think it really comes down to doing that detailed grocery list. I think it's so important. What do you think, Craig?
No, spontaneity in the grocery store is a bad thing, and they really do. The merchandising really does play off of that. I know there's an old adage that I think is true: is that you should never go to the grocery store when you're hungry, because everything sounds good.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's no doubt about that. The other thing, leftovers. The leftovers kind of have this bad rap, but when you're planning your meals, you know, think about, can we eat this for 2 or 3 nights in a row, or will it keep so we can, eat it Monday and then eat it again on Wednesday or Thursday? But that can be a huge savings, especially for a smaller family. It's just me and Tracy.
Mhm.
Well, it's hard to make a meal for 2 people that's just going to be that one meal. So if Tracy's going to cook, we've got to think about how many times are we willing to eat this.
Oh, absolutely. Like I know today my wife is making a big pot of chili. And we've already decided, hey, Ralph, this is your dinner tonight, and it's going to be your dinner Thursday night. Thursday night's my late night that I meet with clients. She's like, just be prepared. There's going to be a bowl of chili heading over to the office with you. And the thing, I don't know if you've gone through this with your wife, Craig, or not, but like as we get older, the kids have left the nest. My wife and I just don't have the appetites we used to have.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like there's more. It's harder to find like to put those meals together. But I think that's all part of creating that detailed grocery list because,
Right.
like you said, that's spontaneity. The other thing I'm going to recommend people do is shop the sales. My mom's second husband was great with this. He every Sunday he'd get the newspaper and I don't know how effective this was, but he'd have all the ads for the different local grocery stores and he'd kind of plan out his strategy. Well, I'm going to go to this one to get this and this, and I'm going to go to this. Now I think you can get a little crazy with that. And then you got to factor in your time and all this kind of stuff. But you can look at that. The grocery stores put out what they call loss leaders.
Yeah,
They're going to
absolutely.
put stuff out there that, hey, you want to do this? You just got to take a look and make sure you're not falling victim to the spontaneity when you hit the store.
Right, right. Absolutely. And coupons are still a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I know everything's digital now, but you can still clip coupons and save quite a bit of money. Especially if you're not. This is another big message: is don't be overly picky about brands. Is there that much difference between the Snyder's pretzels and the rolled gold pretzels?
But
Get the
Craig,
one you can get cheaper.
as the old adage say, them are fighting words.
Oh,
Because
sorry.
I know Mark from Practical Prepping. He likes his corned beef hash, I think it is, and he'll tell you the only kind he eats is Hormel, as I remember. But you're right. No, but Craig, you make a bigger point though, and that is truly: are we as sensitive to the brand? And if you are, then we put that in that category of wants. And then you
Right.
decide, well, maybe this week we're not going to do this because the one we really like is so expensive. Which leads me to the next thing I recommend, and that is consider buying in bulk. Now you can get crazy with this. Like I don't know if you've got them where you're at in Louisiana, but we've got the Costco and the Sam's Club. Now you go in there, it looks like you're buying for giants, right? Because the last time we went in there, like I think there was, and I'm not overestimating, I think it was a 50-pound bag of rice. Now, like you and your wife Tracy, like my wife and I, Jennifer, like we're not eating 50 pounds of rice unless for the next 6 months or the next 6 years, maybe even at that point. But so buying in bulk makes sense, but you got to look at what you're buying and are you going to use it? Because my personal opinion on those stores is they entice you with that bulk stuff. Like I know one of the things at the Costco, like here locally, I love croissants, butter croissants. And you go, and these are fantastic at the local Costco. But the problem is there's about 30 of them in the box. As a
Right.
type 2 diabetic, I'm like, I should not be eating butter croissants to begin with, much less 30 of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got the same
No,
situation down where you're at.
We have, I think the next time we'll have to buy Ritz crackers is probably going to be 2042 because I bought some from Sam's Club.
Right.
And so, yeah, yeah. But, something like that will last a really long time versus a muffin or a croissant. And so you can plan these things out. I have a question that really Costco and Sam's are both really good at.
Mhm.
What do you think about store brands
I
versus the name brands?
It's funny you bring that up, Craig, because when I was a kid, like I said, my mother raised us, as a single mom, and she used to buy the. I remember we used to shop at the Pathmark. I don't even know if Pathmark's still around, but they had this quote "no frills" brand, and I remember because it was no frills. I mean, it was like a white label with black lettering. Well, the truth is, I've tried some of those store brands, and to be honest with you, when you flip them over and you look at the ingredients, it's the same stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you one personal thing: I don't like store brand ketchup. I like the Heinz ketchup. But anyway, but you're right, Craig. I think you bring up a good point. And there are so many opportunities for where you can buy the store brand and it might save you 10, 15, hey, maybe 20% of the cost. So I think that's a very valid point.
Especially with over-the-counter medications where, I have an allergy spray that the name brand is, I think, $15, $18 per little bottle. For like 25, I can buy 5 or 6 of the same things in a generic brand. And so, if you let go of those name brands, I mean, sometimes, all right, you want to spend an extra 50 cents on ketchup that lasts you 2 months, go nuts. So I think you
Right.
can go overboard with all of this too if you're not careful.
Oh,
There's still value in pleasure.
oh, absolutely. And you can get into what I say this to a lot of my clients. You can go into paralysis through analysis.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to get there. So there's some things you could do. Compare prices between different stores, compare brands, smart, do savvy shopping. Like for example, like I like to eat strawberries every day with my breakfast. And my wife says to me about 2 months ago, she goes, "Do you realize what we're paying for strawberries in November?" I said, "Didn't even consider it." So she goes, "Look, you're getting frozen strawberries from now or canned produce. Now, is it as healthy for you? One could argue yes or no. I actually think some of the frozen stuff's even better, but you got to shop with the season too.
Right.
I think that's a big part of it. And one big thing, and you mentioned this a little bit, Craig, in that plan to use your leftovers, that we waste so much food.
Oh,
We
yeah.
truly do. And that it all goes into all the things we talked about is that creating that list, planning out your meals and planning for those leftovers. Craig, I think that's huge. But you're right. Because like you see it on the sitcoms, you see it on the mainstream TV. Oh, who wants leftovers? Oh, we're eating that again. But like, I gotta be honest with you. Sometimes I think, especially when my wife makes a soup or a stew, I think that stuff's better a day or two later. Now, when it's starting to get like a film on it or it's starting to
Yeah.
grow hair, that's usually not a good sign. But if you store it correctly and you're diligent about it, you can certainly save yourself some money, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up something that I think really important too, kind of, is you pay for convenience. So I don't have kids, but Lunchables, what you pay for a few crackers, a couple squares of cheese, and a little bit of, third rate lunch meat is just insane. A
And
little bit
Craig,
of
I don't
prep
think
time over the
people real
weekend.
and I don't think
Yeah.
people realize it, but it's that convenience and it's funny you said that. So one of my top things I was going to say is avoid pre-prepared convenience food. Because yeah, you're paying for that. You look at the portion of that. Those Lunchables are a great example. I remember when my kids were smaller. Oh, can we get the Lunchables? Because it usually had a toy in it or it had some kind of cool picture on it. But when you look at what you're actually getting, I remember they used to sell these Lunchables and they had little, they look like dollar size coin of turkey, and there'd be 3 or 4 pieces of those, and 3 or 4 pieces of cheese, and 4 Ritz crackers. And it was like, I don't remember, $3 or $4, where if you bought, like you said, Craig, you bought those things individually, it's a lot less costly.
Even if you have to buy some toys to throw into the lunch bag, you're still ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And then when we're seeing inflation, I'm hoping inflation is going to come down, but we haven't seen a huge decrease yet. I think it's going to take time for things to get back. But I think all of these things, if you really focus on these things, you can, in fact, find ways to save money.
Well, and even if inflation does get under control, if you build these habits about smart shopping and all these things, avoiding convenience, leftovers, you're still going to be better off when prices come down.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about building that habit. It's
Right.
all about building. And I'm going to share a Bible verse here because I think this is really appropriate. And this is from Philippians chapter 4, verse 12. And it says, and this kind of gets back to this discussion we were having about, wants versus needs. And this is what it says. It says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And Craig, I really feel like that really addresses kind of what we're talking about. And let's being a Christian finance show, I didn't want to forget about that. But that's part of it too. Is we have to have. It's funny. Somebody said to me the other day, "You'll get a kick out of this one because this is a whole Christian discussion." People say, "Well, you need to have faith. You need to have faith that the Lord will provide." And somebody said something I thought was brilliant. They said, it talks about in the Bible that even God watches out for the birds, and that's true. But somebody said, "But Ralph, the birds have to leave the nest."
Yeah.
The birds have to do some action. So what we're talking about, what we're sharing today are actions that you can take. If you want to see a decrease in your cost, you want to make money, like Craig just said, start building up that endurance by doing these little things because little things add up. They really do.
Well, and you talk a lot about being good stewards of the resources you're given as part of the Christian faith. And that extends to what you spend your money on. So even if you have plenty of money to go buy groceries, if you're not really getting value out of what you're spending the money on, that's not being a good steward.
Well, that's absolutely right. It's interesting. Like I said, I was recording a show today and it came to me something while I was recording. It's like, if you think about it like this, it's all a question of if you're taking money from this bucket, you're taking it from this bucket. So if you're at the grocery store, and let's say you don't have to worry about where your next meal's coming from, you're in a position where you've got enough money coming in that you don't worry about it. But every extra dollar you're spending is less money you're going to have for retirement. It's less money you're going to put in investments. It's less money that you're going to be able to maybe give in charitable contributions. So you're right, Craig. So even if you're listening to this right now or you're watching this, you're saying, I don't worry about that. My grocery bills aren't that high, but yes, but they're still costing you something. And if you are a better steward of your resources if you decide to put it here or put it there. So that is a very brilliant point, Craig. Well, let's get to our third question of today. And this one is coming to us from David. And David writes this. He says, Hi, Ralph. I feel like certain everyday expenses. We're on a theme here, Craig. I just realized this. Let me start over again. So, hi, Ralph. I feel like certain everyday expenses are draining my bank account like a leaky faucet. I think that's a great metaphor. Can you help me identify these expenses and give some tips on how to address them? Craig, I'll tell you what, man, this is one I hear all the time right now. This is a time of year when I'm meeting with a lot of people and people come in and are like, Ralph, I know you have this podcast show. What are your ideas for trying to save money? So, David, first thing, thanks for reaching out. You feel like money's slipping away. I get it. It's frustrating. But let's talk about some of the things you can do. One of the things that I think about, Craig, and this is a big one. Craig and I belong to some podcasting groups, and we were talking about this one the other day, and that's subscriptions and memberships. I don't know how many of these that I have, and it's funny. One of the things I just had one the other day. I think it's called Jib Jab. It's like this app where you can create these cartoons. I didn't even realize it. I had this thing set up to auto renew once a year. Well, it's like I set it and forget it. And then it auto renewed. I was like, I haven't used this thing in 2 years.
I was going to say, I think that was a thing like 5 years ago.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So that'll just tell you how long I've been paying it.
Yeah.
But think about how many of these subscriptions and these memberships that people have. One of the funniest things, I was working with a couple months ago, husband and wife, and I was doing some financial counseling. And one of the things I always encourage them to do is write down where every single dollar goes. And this particular couple, their dynamic was he had his checking account, she had hers, and they kind of had this one in the middle where they kind of shared expenses. When we looked at it, they both were paying for the same subscriptions. And I said, this is so common. But it's that old adage, like I say on my show all the time, what gets measured gets done. So look at your bank statements, look at your credit card statements, look at your PayPal account and see what you're paying for. And then again, do that analysis. Is this something that I need? Or is this something that I want? Like you said, you don't have to live, in a cave and not have memberships. We all pay for these things and that's okay to do. But I see so many people, Craig, I don't know about you, but like they have these memberships and they just kind of set it and forget it. And it just stays on this on. And listen, the companies love it because they're getting that recurring income. And if you don't call and complain or if you don't cancel it, they're not going to bother you.
I'm feeling very attacked right now when I think about
Uh-oh.
all the subscriptions I have. So one little thing that I'm trying that's helping is going into my Google Calendar, and this would work with whatever calendar you use, and setting a little thing that says cancel or reevaluate this subscription a week or two before it renews. The ones that get me are the annuals.
Oh, absolutely.
The monthly ones I kind of see every month, and so if I'm not using it, I'm out, $7 or whatever. But I got one that was $200
Yeah.
that I'd kind of forgotten about, and I'm not sure I need. But they've got their money, and I'm not getting that back, so it's another year of it.
This happened to me the other day. I signed up for a test of that beautiful AI for doing AI based slides. And it said very clearly, put your credit card, you get 7 days. Well, guess what? I got busy. So guess what I've got for a whole year now? I got
Yeah.
beautiful AI. I can't blame them. They're selling a product that's valuable. But like you said, Craig, what I should have done is 6 days into that, put on my calendar, hey, Ralph, are you using beautiful? And I'll get value from it. Don't misunderstand me. But you're right, Craig. That's a brilliant thing to do.
Well, unfortunately, that's a really good tool if you have to make slides. So at least that one's pretty good.
No, absolutely. But
But
but you're right. And I think those annual ones are complicated. So one of the things that I recommend clients do, especially if you're on the Apple phone, if you've got Apple subscriptions, you can go right to your Apple account and look at those. And let's say it's one of those ones that renews every year. Well, you can check a box that says don't automatically renew this.
yeah,
You're still gonna have access to it for the next 11, like me, 11 months and 30 or 29 days because I wasn't paying attention. But at least you set into motion that momentum of I know this, I'm not going to renew this because I think that
right.
if we looked at it in the economy, I bet you there's people, I don't know, I don't have a statistic for this, but I bet you there's huge numbers of people who are paying for stuff that they don't use.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me if it's close to the majority of people
I
that
think
are
you're
paying
right.
for something. I mean, that's the whole basis for the gym industry, right?
Well,
People that
sure.
come a couple of times and then never show back up.
Yeah, I bet you, at the beginning of the year, it's like everybody's, oh, we got to go join Planet Fitness. We got to join this. I bet you if you walked into the gym now, what are we, February the 18th? The place is probably vacant at this. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit pessimistic. Maybe
No,
there's
I
still a
think
little
you're
bit going on.
yeah, a few people. But one of the things that I really struggle with here is thinking, oh, it's only $10. And so it's kind of, if it's something that's a couple $100, yeah, that gets my attention. But especially with inflation, what's $10? But $10 here, $10 there, eventually you're talking about real money. And so that, but they price these subscriptions at a level to where you won't worry about it. And so try not to fall into that trap.
Oh, that's marketing genius if you think about it. They set it at the level that's just low enough to where you don't, it's, yeah, okay, I might use it. But you're absolutely right. Another big one that catches people in this area is dining out. Like, and
Uh,
listen, I'm a victim of this. My wife and I, as the kids have gone and done their own thing, we eat out a lot. It's kind of, for me, it's not so much the food component, it's the socialization component, it's the getting out and doing stuff, but it does cost you more. Like I said to I'm an analyzer, right? So I track every single expense. And I said to her, I guess a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at our end of the year stuff, and I said, "Do you realize we spent X on eating out?" I won't tell you the number because it's personally embarrassing, Craig. And and she goes, well, "Yeah, I figured that, Ralph, because you like to eat out all the time." But then I said to her, "But think about this. I even know it by restaurant. I can tell you how much was spent at this restaurant and spent at this restaurant." And then, I see a big proliferation of this with this DoorDash and Grubhub.
yeah,
I had a client in a couple of weeks ago, Craig, husband and wife, and they've got like teenage kids. And they were complaining about how their kids are always ordering DoorDash. And I said, "Who's paying the bill?"
yeah,
He
yeah.
said, well, like my youngest son, he's a barber here locally. And he'll say to me sometimes, on Sundays, I'm just so tired. I just ordered DoorDash and they bring the Dunkin' Donuts to me. And I'm like, wow, do you you're trying to, and I'm not picking on him. He's new. He's starting his career. He's 23 years old. So he doesn't have a lot of extra money, but that's a huge area. What do you think, Craig? I mean, do you see that as being an issue too?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially again, going back to inflation, as prices have gone up and up and up. Dining out has been hit as hard as anything. But I think it's worth a little bit of a caution, though. If you get a lot of pleasure out of going out with your wife or with your family, sure, it's a good question to ask. Should we cut back on this? But it's also okay to say, no, we shouldn't, because this is really important time for us. It's not preventing us from saving enough for retirement or paying our bills or whatever else. So if you've got the money and you get the benefit out of it, I think it's okay. I struggle with this a lot because I'm naturally cheap, but it's really okay
No,
to
you're
go
right.
out
And
and spend some money.
And I think it's that needs versus want thing. And see, so there you have a need to connect with your wife. You have
Right.
a need, like one of the things that we do is every Sunday, my wife and I and my youngest son, who still lives in town here, we go and see my wife's mother. She has dementia and she's in a nursing home. Well, one of the things we do is we go visit with her and then we have dinner together. Well, that's a family dinner. So you're
Right.
right, Craig. There's value in that besides the eating out part. You're right. And with any of these decisions, we've got to look at there's the immediate, that gratification part, but there's also the other side of that. And you got to build that thing in, which leads me to the next thing. And this is one thing I think all of us can work on, and that's impulse purchases.
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
how many times that I've counseled people, I've done it myself, but ask yourself this question. I said this morning when I was recording. Every single purchase, is this a need or a want? And here's my advice for everybody watching or listening. If it's a want, wait 24 hours.
Yeah.
Now, some people, 24 hours isn't enough. You may have to wait 36 or 48 or 2 weeks. I don't, but think about it, because it's so easy to make that impulse purchase. Like you talked about in the grocery store. The grocery store is the definition of impulse. When you're
Right.
checking out the grocery store, as you're getting into the checkout line, they've got just, all this stuff that's attacking you as you're standing there waiting for the person in front of you to check out. There's gum and there's magazines and there's candy and this and that. Not very good things for you either, by the way.
Right.
But what do you think about that, Craig? I mean, that impulsive
Well,
buying is big.
no, I can testify to that 24-hour rule. So Tracy and I are trying that.
Mhm.
So she's doing 24 because she's a little bit better at it than I am. I'm doing 48. So something, unless it's, I need vitamins or,
Right.
something that I really need, a
But that's more
staple.
the needs versus want. I'm really saying
Right,
on the
right.
want side of
Yeah,
things.
exactly. So it goes in the shopping cart and sits there for at least 2 days. And I was shocked. We just started this right around the first of the year. And I looked at our credit card bills and I went down to Tracy and I said, "Are you buying less?" And she said, "Yeah, we were going to do that 24-hour thing." I mean, it was, and our credit card bills are pretty high, so it's got to be a big difference for me to notice it. And it's like, wow. I was simultaneously horrified and proud. I was proud that we've gotten this under control. I was horrified by how much we were buying that was unnecessary before. But that really does work. That little bit of cooling off period can make a huge difference because a lot of things look good in the moment. Like there was a frying pan that I put in the
Let's
shopping
hear
cart
about the
today.
frying pan, Craig. Come on,
Yeah, so it's, but
let's
New York Times has it the best, nonstick pan. It was $30, which doesn't mean anything to my life.
right.
But it's sitting in the shopping cart, and I'd say it's probably 50-50 whether or not we're going to get a new frying pan because we certainly don't need one. But if after 2 or 3 days, hey, I really like a nice frying pan, I'm going to buy this one. Okay, but then you've moved. This is to your point. You've moved out of that impulse mode. You've had some time to kind of reflect on it, think about it, consider it. If you still want to do it, do it, and don't feel guilty about it.
And see, I think that that's the huge danger of Amazon. And I'm not going to sit here and
Oh
pick at
yeah,
Amazon, but listen, I know here where I'm at, we have I think Amazon distribution centers are everywhere. I think they've honestly taken over the world as we weren't looking. But I mean, I can literally sit at my desk this morning before 9 a.m. If I want something from Amazon, it'll be at my front desk by 3 or 4 p.m. this afternoon.
yeah,
It's just so easy. And even when before Amazon, we'd have to get in a car and go to the store. Well, that cut down on a lot of that impulse because you had to get out and do it. You had to go into the store. You had to find the checkout person, find which one. Now it's just a matter of point and click. I mean, you can say things to these online services. Hey, I don't want to say it now because it'll set it off behind me, but they'll actually
yeah,
do the shopping for you. And I think you're right. I think one of the tips you can take away, and Craig and I are both endorsing this, is put the stuff in your cart and then let it simmer like it's a beef stew. And you're just waiting for that thing to cook
right.
down and really get good, because you might go back to that. It's funny because, Craig, I haven't really thought about it. I started doing this myself the other day. and I went and logged into Amazon for something I had to get, a need that I needed. I needed to get some vitamins, actually, is what I was ordering. And I said, wow, I got all these things in my cart. Like, what was I thinking at the time? But listen, I had a kind of counsel, maybe it was about a year ago, and we looked at it. They were spending between $800 and $1,000 a month between their family. There's family, husband and wife, 2 kids, $1,000 a month on Amazon purchases. Now, some of that was groceries, some of that
So
was bulk items,
I wish mine was that low.
but you understand what I'm saying. Now
No,
look,
it's a lot of money.
again, I'm not poo-pooing on Amazon because they offer a great product. It's very convenient. And listen, if you're buying stuff that you need, a lot of times the prices there are better than the grocery store. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense to spend at the grocery store if you can, but just I think that cooling off period is really
That's
a good
huge.
thing to do.
Hey, Ralph, I've got a one that most people wouldn't have thought about before that's saving me a bunch of money. So there's a thing called mobile virtual network operators, MVNOs. Have you heard of those?
No, I've never heard of that. What is that?
So these are mobile phone companies that piggyback off of the big networks.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I can
So
see
like it
the
seems like Mint Mobile and
yes,
Visible
yes,
and those
yes,
kind of
yes. I see those commercials. Absolutely.
well, so we Verizon is what we get that's how we can get a signal at my place. So I was spending a ton of money on Verizon, and I moved Tracy and her mother over to an MVNO a couple of years ago, and saved. We went from paying probably $40, $50 a line to paying about 15 a line. Neither one of them are big data users,
Mhm.
so just got a nice cheap plan. Then I finally moved myself over this month.
Did you really?
Take a guess how much I'm going to save just on my phone.
I bet you're going to save $100 a month.
You're not far off. I'm going to save over $60 a month.
Yeah, that's
And
huge.
that's for an unlimited plan that's
Mhm.
using the exact same network as I was using. Plus, I use US Mobile now.
Mhm.
I can actually switch among the big 3 networks.
Oh, wow. So you can
So if I'm
change whatever
somewhere,
network you want
yeah,
to do.
if I'm going somewhere where T-Mobile is going to be best,
Mhm.
like maybe I come up to visit you for the football game, and Verizon's not so good, but AT&T is great. I get online, switch over, 10 minutes, I'm on AT&T.
Wow.
And so that's huge. Tons of data,
And you don't
unlimited
see
data.
any degraded service. They're not throttling it or anything like that.
No, now some of them do.
Okay. So you
Some
gotta
of them do. So you
you
have to
gotta
do your
read the
research.
fine print, understand what you're doing.
Right.
But Craig, going along line, not to interrupt you, but like, how many times are you on Wi-Fi anyway?
Yeah,
And that's
90%
the
of the
thing
time.
people don't understand. People think they have this huge data usage. Look at your use case. Most of the time, I'm sitting in my office. I got Wi-Fi. I'm sitting at home. I have Wi-Fi. But go ahead. I mean to interrupt you, but I think that's a really valid point.
No, unless you do a lot of traveling where you need to be on your own, your own data connection for security purposes or that kind of thing, there's almost always wireless, unless you're driving down the highway or something like that. You can connect to Wi-Fi. But that's a huge, I'm going to save $800 a year.
Right.
What it's going to come down to, $800 a year.
And see,
So
then with that saving, you can decide maybe you take your wife out to dinner more because you're saving. And this is one of the discussions I was going to say is that as you reduce the value or to reduce the cost of those needs, it opens up that door to feed more of those wants. And that's one of the things that, from a psychological perspective, we can still have those things we want. We can have our little splurges. And if we can save money over here and that's a brilliant one because you look at a cell phone is it's like connected to everybody's body at this point.
yeah.
I did a show that actually released today about how to protect yourself with cell phone security. Like a lot of people don't think about it. It's a huge gaping hole in
Oh
most
yeah.
people's security plan, but we all have them. And if everybody's paying $100, because we have this false belief that you got to have the best, you got to have the highest data plan, you got to have this screaming internet. But look at your use case. Now, if you're somebody that's out like a traveling salesperson, you
Yeah.
don't have Wi-Fi, could be a different use case there. But Craig, that's huge.
Well, and you can always switch back.
Right.
Now, I was really confident about this, so I went with an annual
Oh,
plan.
did you really?
But yeah, 'cause it just saved some money, and I already knew that this was going to work well at our
Mhm.
house. But you can try one of these MVNOs for a month or two, and if it doesn't work out, Verizon or AT&T will take your money again. They're
Oh
not
yeah.
going to, it's not some, partner that you broke up that doesn't want you back. They'll take your money again.
Yeah, you don't have to do a post-nuptial, prenuptial agreement. You're not going through a cell phone divorce, right, Greg?
That's right. But there's one big caveat.
Mm-hmm.
If you've gotten your phone through your carrier, which I think is a bad idea,
Right.
you need to double check the fine print and see if that's going to cost you more than you would save. And you may need to wait until your phone is paid off or your obligation is up.
And that's one of the
Um,
reasons I do mine through Apple directly.
yeah, same
And
here.
I do it through Apple. And the benefit to that is I think I have a 1 year plan with Apple. It pays over a certain amount of 12 months and I can renew every year, but you can pick your carrier. They could care less,
Yeah, that's
but
right.
you're right. And that's where you had to be careful of that, because I know I use Verizon as an example. And I know Verizon always sends me, "Hey, you're entitled to an upgrade." I've tried to wean my wife off of that, my 2 children off of that, because I said, get it directly through Apple. That way, if you want to change carriers, you can do that. But you're right. People don't realize it's the same. It's the same antennas. It's not like they have 12 different antennas in each area of where they're serving.
They do have different prioritization levels, but that often doesn't matter at all.
Right.
One kind of bigger point is Verizon is offering you those free phones because it's good for Verizon, not because it's good for you.
Right.
So just always keep that in mind. If somebody's really offering you this great deal, there's something underneath there that you
Well, you
need to
get
watch
what you
out
pay
for.
for. I mean, that's just the truth, right? If somebody, I always think it's funny because people say, "Well, I just got a free phone at the Verizon store." You didn't get a free anything.
No.
You got a deferred free phone, but
Yep.
Verizon's making money on that.
That's right. That's right. I mean, that's why they do it. It's always, that's as long as they've had mobile phones, it's been
Oh,
the same deal.
absolutely. Well, let me add a couple more things. One of the other things, and this was big during the 70s. I was born in the early 70s, but I don't hear people talking as much about this. And that's turn the light off when you leave the room. Energy consumption is a big deal, and I think that we've kind of lost track of that. We lost sight of that because I think it's partially because we have all these gadgets around us all the time and they're just always running, and there's convenience in that. But one of the things that I mentioned on my show a lot is like when I built my new office here on the farm, I did all of these puck LED lights. Well, they take almost no energy and they're super bright, a little bit too bright some days.
No,
But
those things are awesome. Yeah.
they really are. And you can adjust the color, you can adjust all these type of things to them. And it's little things like that. Yeah, maybe it's $10 a month, maybe it's 20. Like right now in Delaware, there's this big battle going on because our local electric provider has increased everybody's rate. And I said, well, this may be an opportunity for people to say, turn the light off, turn off the
Yep.
extra stuff. And you also mentioned brand name products. I think that's another big one here. We talked about that on the grocery stuff, but yeah, look at the store brands, test the store brands. Hey, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Look at the generic products. I just think that's a very simple thing that you can do.
Well, and a lot of times, especially the grocery stores, the name brand and the store brand are coming down the same production line and they just split and go into different boxes. And so it's literally not always, but a lot of times it's literally the exact same product, just in a different package.
Just a private label on it. That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't realize that. And but as we become aware of these expenses, this is the bottom line to this section. As we become aware of these, you can make conscious decisions to help reduce it. It can free up money for savings. It can free up money to get out of debt or other financial goals you have. But the big takeaway here for me, Craig, is look at what you're spending. A lot of people say, well, that sounds good, Ralph, or that sounds like a good idea, Craig, but you got to measure what you're doing. Track your expenses. People think I'm crazy to say this, but have that intentional spending plan. Have that budget plan. And then compare your results to what you planned. Like you said, you were surprised when your credit card bill was so much less. Well, that's fantastic. And then you can make better decisions once you do that.
Right. Right. Great advice.
So like I said, if you're struggling to make ends meet, and I think the question was great here, you feel like money's disappearing. Here's the thing. You can take control of your finances. It's your decision. Like I get so sick and tired when I hear people say, well, I've never been good at managing money. Well, I've never been. That's your choice. You've put yourself in that position. And that might seem like a really negative thing to say, but it's so true. You have the ability to make that change. Listen, Craig, I'm going to tell you something right now. About 20 years ago, I weighed 420 pounds. This is the truth. Went to the doctor. He said, Ralph, you're going to pop, dude. Like my blood pressure was 200 over 100, type 2 diabetes. And he looks me square in the eyes and he says, you have 2 young boys. Do you want them to be orphans? Right? And this goes along with these financial decisions, like financial physical fitness. It's the same thing. You have to make the choice. Evaluate your subscriptions, reduce dining out, avoid those impulse purchases. It's little things, but it helps build up that inertia. It helps build up that momentum. So let me give you some action steps here. So I think these are really important. Evaluate these subscriptions for the next week, next 2 weeks, 30 days. Look at every single thing you're spending money on for subscriptions and memberships and say to yourself, is this a need or is this a want? And maybe you decide, hey, this month we're going to do Netflix. Next month we're going to do this one we're going to, but do that. Look at your dining out expenses. Avoid those impulse purchases like Craig and his wife are doing. I think that one's huge. Be mindful of your household expenses. Look at those store brands. It can also reduce your transportation cost. Maybe you take a bike now. It depends on where you live. I mean, like I live out here in the country, man. If somebody says to me, you're going to use public transportation, I'll be like, it could be a mule that goes past every once in a while, but it's not going to happen. But again, I'm going to encourage you, if you want to go deeper in what we're talking about today, I do have a blog post. It's at askralphpodcast.com/blog. So I encourage you to check that out. But Craig, as we wrap things up today, I just want to say that if people feel like they're overwhelmed and they feel like they don't know where to start, one of the things you can do is you can actually book a call with me. Go right to askralph.com and we'll do a consultation together. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. With Zoom, I can meet you wherever you are and I can help you get started. I'll help you on that journey because it's not simple. And it's not like I can say, here's your destination. It's a journey. It's a learning process. So that's one of the things I'm going to encourage you today. And one more thing I'm going to bring to your attention. If you're interested in supporting the show, now you might say, Ralph, what does that mean? Well, we do this thing called Buy Me a Coffee, and it's a virtual coffee. No one's going to show up here at my office with coffee because I don't even drink coffee, to be honest with you. But it's a way to support the show. It's a way to help us reach more people. And that's really my mission. This isn't about profit for me. It's about what new networks can I go on? How can I reach more people with a message of hope and with a message of there is a way to get past this? Craig, did you have anything else to add today before we call it a day?
Well, just that you do have control over your budget. If you've got a piece of paper and you've got a pencil, you can create a budget and a plan for your spending. And so even if all you do is knock one subscription out, you've done something. So this can be a really big task for a lot of us. You don't have to do it all at once. Just get started and you'll be better off.
And that's critical. Start small. I'll leave everybody with this. When I was going through that time in my life where I was so big, you know what I did, Craig? I started by getting up off the couch and I walked across the room and I got out of breath doing that. Well, then I did that for 2 or 3 days. And then I said, I'm going to walk to the edge of the driveway. I'm going to go to the mailbox. And I would walk to the end of the mailbox. And it was tough, man. It was hard because I was a big dude. And then I would say, oh, you know what? I think I can go down the lane and I can go a little farther. And I went around the cul-de-sac. Well, let me tell you, in about 12 months, Craig, guess what I did? I ran a 5K.
That's amazing.
And again, it's not about me, but it was about, I set my mind to it. I put a goal out there. I said, look, and it was the slowest 5K anybody probably ever ran. I think it took me 45 minutes, but it wasn't about the time for me. It was about finishing. It was about getting through it. And that's what Craig and I are saying. If you're listening or you're watching today, you can change your dynamic. It's up to you to make those decisions. So as I end today, I just want to say my passion is to help you achieve financial success. I want to see you live out your dreams and I want to see you grow in your faith. And I know working together. So continue to listen to The Daily Show. Continue to join us on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Bring your questions. So as I end today, here's what I always say, Craig, as we go. And thanks again for joining me, Craig. It's been great having you on the show.
Appreciate it.
But stay financially savvy out there and may God bless you abundantly.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph Show. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.